Hey everybody, I'm Hamza Krumza, and today we'll be doing a relatively well-known build, the Lithuanian 18-pop Scout Rush. This build is one of the strongest Scout Rushes in the game and has recently been used in the AoE 2 2v2 World Cup by Spain against the Canadian team. Today, we'll learn to do it ourselves. Hope you enjoy. So as far as Scout Rushes go, this build is one of the most APM friendly 18-pop Scout Rushes in the game, since you have the convenient bonus of 150 extra food to start the match, and this means you kind of won't have to force drop as often during the builds, and this just means less micro overall. While you can go 17 population or even 16 pop Scout Rushes as the Lith, this build is overall the most flexible and solid, and why I've actually decided to showcase this one instead of the 17 or the 16 pop build. Now, as with most early Scout Rushes, your main objective in this build is to be able to do his damage as early as possible in the form of either an early villager pick or maybe even getting your opponent's scout if you're in the right place at the right time, and then try to snowball and abuse that advantage. Sometimes you can actually intercept your opponent's man-at-arms if they're coming forward with their militia and get some really solid damage in while they actually still are the militia. Now, normally I'll use this build on an open map like Arabia or Serengeti, but as the pro player Lan has shown us, this build can kind of be used anywhere, and with some variation, even on close quarter maps like Chaos Pit in the AoE 2 World Cup, and can do a fantastic amount of damage. Now, I wanted to keep this intro a little bit short, so before we get started, I wanted to make a quick note that while deer pushing in this build is not necessary, it will translate into longer, non-stop scout production if you can get away with pushing them in greedily. If your deer are close, it might be worth it to push in one or two to get a really good amount of scouts onto the map. But if they're too far, just don't bother. Also, while I did see this from Lan for the first time, shout out to Hera's video in the description, which is essentially this video, but hopefully I'll be able to showcase a little bit more and a little bit of feudal action as well, just to show you what's possible. With that being said, all that's left to do is show you how, so let's go get it. Alright. So another day, another build order, and we're going to start off like we always do with our 3 villagers building the 2 houses off the bat, and our next villagers queued up to go and start gathering from our sheep, and in this case the cow. So one thing that's important here is when you're starting off, you have that extra 150 food bonus to, from the jump, and that's going to really help with the smoothness of your food collection. So when you're gathering your food, you don't really have to think about force dropping so much, or just making it in time for those tight food collection. So like for instance, if you're playing a normal civ around villager 10 or villager 11, you have to do a few force drops just to get your food collection in at the right time. Lithuanians just have a nice little cushion against that. So another thing I just wanted to say before we get started here, camera's going to be a little bit jumpy. This is recorded directly from a ranked game that I was playing. This is around 1700 elo, so my opponent was definitely no chump here, and he played this pretty well. And I'm playing this against Franks, which is probably one of the most classic matchups you're going to get as Lithuanians. So I wanted to make sure that this was a very tough matchup, and that this was a very applicable matchup to a lot of the people that would be watching this. So what we need to do is, and the reason why this is actually going to be a good build order is the Franks player is most likely going to be going some form of, either 19 pop scouts or 20 pop scouts, and both of those are later than our 18 pop scout here. Now we could go a little bit earlier, like I said, maybe even 16 pop or 17 pop, but 18 pop is just a little bit more solid, and I generally like to stick with the more solid build, so that's what we're going to be doing here. And we're going to try to see if we can find his scout and intercept it before he hits feudal, and if we can do that, then obviously we get a really nice advantage. So, and we're going to just going to be looking for him. I see that he has his scout towards our base, so we're just going to want to make sure that our cow doesn't get intercepted by him, make sure he's not trying to lame us, so we're just going to stick around the boar and go lure our boar here. Now, I haven't talked too much on where to place the villagers, but this is where I'll start, commenting a lot, just a little bit. We sent 3 of our villagers over to wood there, just because that's going to be the standard that we need to maintain our production. And we're going to send the next few villagers over to berries, just to make sure that we get our food income just right. And we want to aim for around 4 on berries. Now I think I put 5 here in this build, in this particular video rather, but I think that 4 is more the way to go, and I would put 4 up there normally. So definitely go with 4 on berries, and I think that's just, like I said, just the most solid. So we queued up our villagers there, and everyone's going to be going to food until we actually click up. So we have everything that we need. We have all the food that we need, have all the villagers that we need, and we are kind of just waiting for our feudal. And one of the things that when I was scouting my opponent here, I saw that he scouted me pretty early, so he was either trying to steal one of my cows or at least lame me, and we just didn't let that happen. So the fact that we intercept one of his cows is just delicious, delicious karma. So we're just going to send that cow to the corner and work from here. So we're, getting our food mostly from the boar here, and once it finishes, we should have 500 food, which we do. And we're going to want to send over 4 from sheep over to wood. Now, I think that sending 5 here is actually better, but if you can optimally place around 4 villagers, that also works, and it doesn't really provide too much of an impact on your build. Here I have so many cows that I didn't want to let too much decay, so I only sent 4, but normally I would send 5, so kind of do that at your discretion, and kind of play it by ear there. The other thing that we definitely know for a fact, so this is just a kind of a game sense thing, we know that our opponent is Franks. If we look at his score, it's relatively similar to ours, so we know he's going for more or less the same strategy as us, right? So if he had a significant score gap between us and him, then that probably means that he's going some type of man-at-arms, possibly man-at-arms into archers, just to be a little bit tricky there and try to stay away from the obvious choice. But it looks like Link has gone for the very obvious choice here, which is perfectly fine and makes sense. He thinks that he can win in a straight out-and-out scout battle, which is a very reasonable assumption. So we're going to try to prove him wrong here and win this battle. So we see his scout is there, and unfortunately our scout isn't in position. I was hoping his scout would be a little bit closer to his base and we could kind of find it there to get some hits, but now we're just going to hunt for one of his villagers and hopefully we can pick one. We're going to build our stable right off the bat, and we're going to research our double Barracks as soon as we can. Now, you should have some sheep underneath your town center at this point, and you shouldn't have eaten through all of them, right? So don't worry too much about the fact that you're not getting horse collar right away. Like, I know that most builds will tell you once you get, and you're playing scouts, once you get to, your feudal age, you're going to want to build, or, at least research your horse collar and get your double Barracks immediately. In this case, I know for a fact that, we're not going to be dealing with building farms just yet, so we're going to delay that for a little bit. Now, we know that he's also, he's Franks as well, so probably makes sense to build a spearman. We're also going to small wall like we did on our wood line there, and make sure that we're a little bit safe at home there. And this is kind of the end of the build here, right? So we've reached the end of the build order portion of it, and I'm just going to kind of let this roll for just a little bit, just to kind of show you how you would want to play this build out and how you would want to adapt. So like I said, like these small walls aren't something that you normally do against AI or something like that, but because we're playing a real person, because they are going scouts, we are going to want to make sure that we're playing against this correctly. So those small walls kind of eliminate us from having to look back at our economy, and we don't really have to worry about him doing any type of sneaky raids on us. We're also managing our economy relatively well. And one of the things that I find is actually really nice to do is actually to send your spears forward. So he's not, sending anything forward, and I think that is actually just because he's later, he feels like he needs to stay at home, which is true. We do have a scout advantage on him. We're about 1 scout faster than him, but he could also move those spears forward and create some pressure with that. But he opts to stay home. He opts to stay, relatively safe, or so he thinks. But we have 2 spears here, and we're going to engage there. We're going to kind of dance around there, get a villager pick, perfect. We lose a scout, but 1 scout for 1 vill is fine. He missed micros here, and this is where we can kind of start to snowball the game in our favor. And this is looking pretty nice for us, right? So we pushed the Franks player off the berries, so he can't take his berries. You know, we're pretty consistently producing villagers. We have a nice economy at home. Even though we're not walling, and we're going to get some nice hits here, perfect. Even though we're not walling at home, I do think that we have a pretty nice pressure forward, so we don't need to wall just yet. But he could, you know, change the tides by doing a nice little counterattack, but like I said, we're just going to play out the odds here. And we're going to be a little bit cheeky there. We don't get the Vill pick, so he was paying pretty close attention to that. And that's kind of, you know, that was a little bit optimistic for me to even go that far underneath the town center. So good play by him, but we're going to try and pull that back here somehow. So we don't want to stop producing scouts here. So in a straight scout battle, and this is kind of, you know, again, this is not build order stuff, but this is, you know, kind of an adaptation type thing. When you're playing scouts versus scouts and you see that your opponent is still building scouts, you want to try and match as many scouts as they have, right? So if he's building, you know, 6 scouts, you want to try to build 6 scouts. If he's building 8 scouts, you want to build 8 scouts. Because the second he wins a confrontation against your scouts, he's gonna have, or you're gonna have, so much more map control at that point in the game that it's gonna be very difficult to go and deal with those scouts if he's microing properly. All of that being said, that's all for this video. I really hope you all enjoyed the build and the gameplay. Huge shout out to Race777, Lawrence, and everyone else who has supported the channel thus far. Hopefully in the near future, I'm going to be branching out to AoE content beyond just the build orders, so stay tuned. Until then, check out the Discord in the description, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye.